Hi, Jessica.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being on my podcast. I'm so pleased to have you. I just thought maybe to begin with, could you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm so awkward at introductions. So I'm Jessica Rose Williams. I am a writer slash lifestyle blogger, living in a tiny village in the Peak District in the UK, and I write about living a slower, simpler, more meaningful and intuitive life, all across the internet.
Absolutely. And actually, I know I've just mentioned that to you before we started recording. I've been following you for, I think, quite a few years. I think I'm talking about 3-4 years probably.
Oh, wow. Well done.
I know it just feels like... And I absolutely loved it. I just think you have such a clear voice, and it's just such a clear, your aesthetic is fantastic. So if anyone hasn't seen your Instagram, they should definitely give it a follow, because it's just so calming and beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It's really, really, really kind of you to say. Thank you.
So I've just finished your book, as I just said. I have it in my hands, and it's beautiful. I've really enjoyed it, and it just is a very beautiful book of itself.
Wow, thank you. It's so strange because obviously it only came out last week as we're talking, but it's just been so nice to actually see it in people's hands and in people's homes, just to see, where it's flying off to. But then to hear that someone's actually enjoyed it is just, it really, really fills my heart. I'm so happy to hear that. You've made my day, made my week. Thank you.
I'm glad. Well, if you need a visual image, so this morning I was actually on the tube. So I live in London, and I was on the tube reading it. So it's definitely been read somewhere on London Underground.
So cool. That's so cool to think of. I love that.
I thought you'll appreciate a little image of your book being open somewhere.
Yeah. Which line? I need to know which line it was on. It
was the best one. It was overground, so nice and airy. I could see the sunshine. But I thought before we're going to jump in and chat about your book, I just wanted to talk about a little bit about your journey. How did you get where you are? So in my podcast, I really like talking about, women's journeys really to get where they are, because often we see someone and we admire them and we think their life looks fantastic. But actually, we only see this little snapshot. So the way to get there takes a while, doesn't it? So I thought it'd be really interesting to know kind of what led you to where you are right now. And obviously without giving away your entire book, but just maybe some of the pivotal moments or the ones that you decide to share with us.
Yeah. That is exactly what the book goes into, really. My entire journey, going right back to when I was little. But to just give you a brief overview without trying to regurgitate 70,000 words in the space of a few minutes, I was diagnosed with cervical cancer when I was 25. And up until that point, I was, like a lot of people, I was heavily conditioned to be a people pleaser and never feel like I was good enough in every sense of that word. So, in terms of looks, in terms of body image, in terms of what I was capable of, what I wanted to do, it was like trying to fill this unfillable void constantly. I was heavily addicted to shopping, to trying to attain all those stereotypical, tick boxes of, I'm doing the air quotes, Joey from Friends, air quotes. The stereotypical success. I was striving for all those things. They were all the wrong things for me. And I was just people pleasing my life away to the point where I didn't know who I was, what I wanted. And my identity was in crisis, really. But I didn't realize it until I was diagnosed with cervical cancer when I was 25. it was only stage one, and I talk about this like survivor's guilt in the podcast, but it was enough to shed a lot of death anxiety onto me, and I really suffered with that for quite a while. But in a way, it was a good thing, because it got me to really think about, you know, if the worst had happened, how would I have felt? What regrets would I have had? And it gave me a good kick up the backside to make some changes. And I made a promise to myself that I would stop doing things that weren't meaningful, and I would, you know, strive for it. At that point, it was all about a more meaningful life, but I didn't know what that looked like at the time. And then I started reading about slow living and minimalism and decluttering, and ended up getting rid of so much stuff. And I created this physical space for myself, and then mental space for myself following that. And it was out of that space that I started to realize that what I really wanted to do in terms of, you know, work and career was I wanted a creative life. I wanted to build a creative business. And so I took a deep breath and started my blog back in 2017. I'd already been messing around with Instagram before that, but actually putting like words out on the internet felt super, super scary. But I've been wanting to do it for years, and I've been watching people and thinking, oh, you know, I'd love to do that. I think maybe I could do that. And you know, when an idea strikes you, you find yourself like daydreaming about it and fantasizing about it, and it's kind of tempting you, isn't it? But you're thinking of all the reasons why not to. And I just went for it, and people started reading it, and I got quite committed to it, and yeah, it grew into a creative business. And yeah, that was 2017. So we're 2022 now. My book's just come out, so it's grown arms and legs, and it's my main gig now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think just your whole presence on an internet, again, it just has such a coherent vibe. I think that's how I would describe it. Have you always had that sense of where you want to end up in, or like that very clear aesthetic, or it just came with time, really, is working through things?
I think I've always been really clear on aesthetic, though I have experimented with that quite a bit. I'm naturally a very visual person, and I really enjoy curating visuals. I always talk, you know, like when I was at school, I don't know if this is a thing at your school, but we had like art folders if you did art in like years 10 and 11. And the card in the art folder, we used to like collage hours. And we all had these really strict uniforms. So I went to a Catholic high school, and that was like our way of expressing ourselves. And I took mine so seriously, that curation, you know, making the collage and creating an aesthetic. It's just something that I've always naturally enjoyed. And then obviously when Pinterest came out, that fed that addiction. So yeah, that's just something that I naturally am drawn to and personally enjoy. But I think it's developed over time, and I think it's been tweaked, and it's always changing slightly and growing. And I think that's the way that it should be.
Agreed. Yeah, it definitely needs to go through changes and kind of development, and all of that. Yeah, that's what makes it beautiful. And I think, so the way kind of I summarised your book, if you don't mind me sharing. So
not at all. Oh, it's here.
I've done the review as well on Goodreads, so I think it will translate to Amazon as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
But the way I said it is, for me anyway, it's very heartfelt, gentle, and at times a bit desperate search for happiness. And I felt like you used minimalism as a filter that you seen your life through. So almost minimalism was a crutch that helped you, that guided you in a way. And I loved it.
I definitely agree with that.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad I got that right, because I think it's really interesting. Obviously, you talk about minimalism a lot, and I've been kind of exploring minimalism for the last few years too. And I loved that you touched on kind of the other side of minimalism and how it can be, I don't know if toxic is too bright of the word, but it can be quite dangerous sometimes, and people take it too far on occasion. But like sometimes you need to explore that and come back to yourself. And I think you do that beautifully through your book, kind of show your journey with that and coming back to where you are now, which is obviously a much more authentic place for you to be.
Yeah, definitely. I think the thing with minimalism, I mean, there's just so many lifestyles out there at the minute, aren't there? And they look so glossy and shiny. Talking about that aesthetic again, they look so glossy and shiny on Pinterest and Instagram, and so alluring, and the kind of the answer to all your problems. And if, like you said, it can be quite dangerous, it can be quite toxic. And I think what you need to be aware of is that these so-called lifestyles can be just as damaging as the very typical consumerist lifestyles. So instead of being told, you're not good enough as you are, you need this, this, and this to be happy, and getting you to buy more things, it kind of works in the opposite way, where it's getting you to get rid of things. And, unless you live this kind of extreme lifestyle, then and happiness is always the carrot that's dangled. And again, I talk about this in the book, and how what I came to the conclusion of is that happiness is not and should not be our ultimate goal in life, even though that's what we're told all the time. That fulfillment is a much more achievable and realistic goal, and that you can feel that in times of happiness and despair at the same time, which is just so much more relieving than feeling like you have to be and should be happy all the time and do whatever it takes to get there. But I also think minimalism can especially appeal to people like me who have a tendency to, as I said earlier, feel like they're not good enough. It can feed their desire, which is quite twisted and often subconscious, but their desire to deprive themselves, and that can get quite toxic and dangerous. But what I love minimalism for, I'm bashing it at the minute, aren't I? What I actually love it for is the permission that it can give you to create space in your life, because I think when we create space in our life, we quieten our minds, and then we can start to listen to our hearts, and what emerges in that space is individual for all of us and can be magical. It definitely was for me.
No, absolutely. I think it's beautifully summed up. And what I find interesting through your book as well, that it's kind of a hybrid, I suppose, of your writing. Obviously, a lot of that based on your personal life, but then also has quite a lot of workbook aspects. And I was just wondering, what was the decision behind that? Why did you want to include kind of some tasks and journaling questions instead of just having pure writing?
Yeah, so I mean, I wanted to create something different because there are so many books out there on minimalism, and I didn't feel like I had anything different to offer to that space, but I wanted to offer what I had learned. And the only way I could make this book unique and different was to add my own story in there. And I'm someone who really enjoys reading other people's stories, other people's struggles, and I find inspiration and motivation in that. So I wanted to try and give that to other people. And I didn't want it to be all about me. So I wanted to share my own path, the pitfalls, the successes of that, but I wanted to invite the readers along with me. So the journal prompts were to just give people a nudge alongside my own journey to start asking themselves the questions that I started to ask myself because they were so valuable to me. So obviously I wanted to share those, and in the hope that I could maybe help other people as well.
And I think it does a brilliant job of that. Yeah, I've really liked your questions, actually. Definitely made me think of things.
Yeah, well, that's always my aim with all of my work. I wanted, if I can make people think and I can make people feel, then I've done my job. That's what my work always. That's the purpose behind all my work.
Absolutely. And actually, while you were writing your book, just curious, did you have like a specific person in mind, or like your ideal reader, if you like? Have you had someone in thought that you thought actually this person would really benefit from reading my story?
I literally blocked every person out and told myself no one was going to read it. And I think that's the only way that I could have written it. I've gone through that before, and I definitely do that with day-to-day work. Like if I'm making a vlog and I'm looking in the camera, I know who I'm looking at because I'm talking to my audience like all the time, people that follow me. So I feel like I know them really, really well. And the same for blog posts and Instagram posts. But with the book, because it was such a huge dream of mine, it felt so scary. I took away any kind of pressure, and I just wrote it as if no one was going to read it, and that really freed up. And yeah, it gave me the freedom to write with compassion, to write in a way that I wasn't trying to impress anyone or anything like that. It freed up the whole process and made it a lot more enjoyable.
Yeah, and I think it definitely shows. And actually, I remember, so as I said, I've been following you for a while, but I remember a few years ago, actually, you were very honest about sharing that obviously you wanted to write a book for a wee while, and you were very honest about that you got rejected from some of the publishing before.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of rejection.
And I wonder if you don't mind sharing, what did you take away from that? And did that change your kind of perception of writing a book in a way?
Yeah, it changed it a lot. I think, like I said, writing a book was a huge dream of mine. I've always been someone who like tears down my own work. So, I've always struggled to call myself a, capital W writer, because I'd always think, oh, well, you just, you pay for your own blog and no one's actually paying you to do it. And like anyone can just write a blog and literally anything to tear myself down. But to be published is traditionally, it's a seal of approval, isn't it? I mean, it's not though. That's the thing that I've learned from this, is like nothing actually changes. It doesn't really mean anything at all. Just because someone else thinks that you were publishing doesn't make your writing any better. Your writing's always been your writing, whether someone was wanting to publish it or not. But it felt like such a scary dream, and what I found myself doing was writing in a way that wasn't really me. And the publishing world, I find it really scary, and I've described it before as like a headmistress's office, with the in crowd in there, and like you're sort of looking through the blinds, tapping on the door, and they just shut them. It did to me anyway. It's an alien world to me. I didn't grow up with those kinds of expectations for myself. It felt like a really, really big scary dream. So I found myself trying to impress these people, and my writing was really, really stiff and rigid, and it wasn't me. And through those rejections, I learned to take that pressure off myself and to write with compassion. And that really changed things and definitely made my writing a lot better and led to a book deal. But those rejections, what I mainly learned from that was that you're going to get rejected. Everyone does. And sadly, a lot of publishing is all about who you know, as opposed to how good a writer you actually are. I can't remember how many times like J.K. Rowling got rejected. It was so many.
Yeah,
I'm
true.
sure it's in like the 20s or 40s or something like that. It's nuts. And it taught me to just keep going. And it was like, they call it exposure therapy, don't they? When you just do that thing that's going to terrify you. And rejection felt so scary to me. So to put myself out there for it and just get, no, it's not for us. No, we're not keen. No. You become not hardened to it, but you become desensitized to that rejection. And then you're more willing to just keep going and do it again. And I think that is a huge part of the process. And that's the advice that I would give to anyone who wants to be a published writer in the traditional sense, is just keep going. Don't give up. If somebody rejects you, it's not personal. And that's not to say that the next pitch is going to be a rejection as well.
I agree. And I think it's very powerful as well, what you're talking about, how kind of pushing yourself and doing this scary thing, because often when we think in our head, I don't know, if I were to submit a proposal for a book now, if I got a rejection, I might think that this is the scariest thing in the world. But once that happens, do you realize actually nothing bad happened to me? My ego just got bruised maybe a little, and I can just get over it 2 days later. Yeah,
exactly that. And you just have to keep going. And usually there is something to learn out of each one. It might be that the pitch wasn't great, or you learn about, well, maybe that publishing house isn't looking for my kind of thing, so you start thinking about which one would. There's always something to learn, and no one starts at the top.
Absolutely. Actually, something that you mentioned earlier that really stuck with me. You were talking about kind of that you had to go through almost those rejections to really find your voice in a way. And I think that theme really comes through your book as well, because I think you talk a lot about how we only find ourselves once we, quite painfully sometimes, peel away those layers of kind of internalized expectations that we picked up from somewhere else, the way they should be, the way they think that we should look, and all of that. And I think that just shows, and you talk about it very honestly and very raw in your book. And I just think that's something that really stuck with me.
Oh, that's good to know. I knew that was the message that I wanted to share, that I believe that we do all have the answers inside, but I think there are a lot of us that share those insecurities, those fears, those traumas, and that often the real us is, while it's in there and it's always wanting and trying to come out, a lot of the time it's shrouded in pain from, I don't know, maybe childhood, maybe, like you said, those expectations. It could be anything, but that true north, that voice is quietened, and it's our job to start that conversation with ourselves and, like you said, peel away. And a lot of us don't want to do that, and I completely understand why. Like, having gone through the process, and it's someone who is still going through that process, wading through your own pain, the insecurities, it's not a nice process. It doesn't feel good, and psychologically we are wired to not do things that don't make us feel good, and society doesn't help with that. But we have to have faith that doing what is right for us and figuring out who we are and what we want and what we like is the richer journey, and is going to be more meaningful and worth it in the end. And that's what I've personally found on my own path / journey.
Yeah, and I think actually all of that just goes back to that insanely deep-rooted fear of us feeling like we don't fit in. And actually you've mentioned that. I think you mentioned that metaphor a few times. You talk about kind of a round peg in a square hole, and I'm curious, what does that mean to you?
It means trying to be yeah, I think it's like we have these idealized versions of ourselves that feel safer. And like you said, we go for those because I think historically we needed to fit in, again, Joey, air quotes, to to survive. If we go right back to tribal times, especially as women, if we didn't fit in, if we didn't go with the flow, our literal livelihood, our lives were at stake, were threatened. And that can still be the case in certain parts of the world. I feel really privileged as a white Western woman to have choices that aren't going to harm my physical safety. But I think there's a lot of rewiring to be done, and I think it can take generations to weed out. And we're just entering this period now, again, especially as women, where we have so many choices, so many opportunities, and we're all finally starting to root for one another instead of constantly being torn down and tearing ourselves down. It feels like there's a real revolution happening at the minute, especially in the creative world, which is so exciting and liberating and freeing. But to step into that means truly allowing ourselves to be seen, and that can be a really scary thing, especially when you've grown up feeling like you're not good enough, or you feel like that now because of all the subliminal messages that's put on us constantly, all the time, literally everywhere that you look. It can feel like a really unsafe, scary thing to do. So instead, we create these idealized versions of ourselves that feel safer, but they're not the real us. And therefore, something will always be out of sync. Something will always feel unaligned. And I think that can create issues for us. I think that's when these things manifest and we think, pushing them down and just putting on a brave face, putting on a smile, carrying on like that's the way to live. But I really don't think that that's actually possible. I think these things manifest and end up coming out sideways unless we actually deal with them, because our subconscious is constantly flying a little flag and rooting for us, not just to survive but to thrive and to flourish. And the only way to do that is to be our true selves, our unique selves, and offer everything that it is that we want to offer to the world naturally, as the what did you say? Round hole, which is it? Square?
Right, peg in a square
round hole. Round peg. I have no idea.
I make it up every time, so I have not a clue.
We need to find our round hole. We just need to be ourselves and have faith in that and trust in that's enough. It's more than enough, though. It's so much more than enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, do you know what actually really helps me is thinking about, I love history, so I learn a lot about that.
Me too.
But just kind of learning those lessons and how actually the way that our culture and society is built right now, it doesn't mean that this is the only right way. And actually, we probably took a few wrong turns to end up where we are right now. Obviously, some things are great, but things like the way the modern world is just driven by patriarchy and those qualities that are quite masculine in a way. And I don't mean just a manly, but just very energetic, very out there, very extroverted, I suppose. And actually finding that quiet, sensitive side, it sometimes feels very vulnerable. And that's something that really resonated with me, because I am naturally very introverted and I class myself as a highly sensitive person. And once I find that, it's a very comforting label, because that's when I realized that actually I'm not alone. And I think that's why I'm quite attracted to your work, because you allow yourself to be vulnerable and sensitive just as you are, without trying to change it or to put a different face on at all times.
I'm nodding along to everything that you're saying. I'm definitely introverted, like you are, and class myself as highly sensitive. And it's so interesting what you're saying about the history side of it. Like, you go back to the Industrial Revolution, which changed so much about how we work now, and women were not part of that plan or that conversation at all. And we should have been. And we're kind of putting our stakes in the ground at the minute, especially as creatives, and saying, hang on a minute, we want to do things our own way. And like I said, going back to that revolution that's happening, we are making our own way. We're stepping out of the workplace. We're making our own creative businesses, supporting one another, helping one another. It's just such an incredible thing to be a part of. And it's something that I don't think we've ever seen before, with female artists all collaborating and coming together and finding their independence and their comfort in being who they are. And not only that, but using that as their superpower to create and to reach other people. It's such a beautiful thing to me.
Absolutely. Are there any things in your life that really help you to kind of reconnect to that side of yourself? Maybe something that helps you to listen to your intuition more, or just feel a bit more grounded and kind of in your own skin?
Yeah, I mean, I have like three pillars for me, which are exercise, meditation, and journaling. And if I was going to choose one of them, it would be journaling. That's my favorite thing to do. That's how I really connect with myself, open up those channels, and it helps me process my thoughts, my feelings. It helps me transcend them, so get them out of my body onto a page. They often don't come out very organized or coherent, but they come out, and that's what makes me feel really, really good and connected to myself. And it helps me make sense of things, because I'm a huge overthinker as well, and I can just get so lost in my own head. That's my favorite thing to do, and I try and do that every single day.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I agree. I'm just nodding along the whole time. I'm actually a meditation teacher, so meditation is something that I swear by. And I think a lot of people would really benefit from more meditation in their life.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just such a good time to just really remember almost who you are and see yourself as yourself, rather than this version of yourself that you kind of have to be during your day most of the time.
Yeah. I love meditation for that.
Actually, another quote that I've really liked, you said that we have to take responsibility of our own well-being to become the change we wish to see in the world. And I love that, because I think a lot of self-help books sometimes talk about how we need to change our surrounding, and sometimes people around us need to change or bend things. But I just love the notion that actually we need to take that responsibility sometimes.
Yeah, I think it can be, it's, living from the inside out. I think it can be so easy to deflect onto other people, onto our surroundings, onto our circumstances, and think, just to give an example, about the book thing, that, oh, this is happening to me because, and this is terrible, and it's, that and the other. But at some point we have to take responsibility for ourselves, especially as adults. I have this thing about wanting to be looked after all the time, wanting other people to do things for me, but that's just not going to get me as far, even if that were the case, as taking care of myself, because we are actually in the best position to give ourselves what we need, as opposed to other people, because we are us, we are connected to ourselves, should be ideally connected to ourselves in a way that can't be resembled through another person. And I think a lot of the time that's a really missed opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, your book is called Enough, and I think it resonates with so many people. It's just, I feel so much freedom in accepting that you are enough as you are. And it also feels so scary to say that to yourself.
Yeah, it can be a scary thing. It's kind of like, oh, no one told me that. Oh my gosh, if that's the case, then hang on a minute. That means I could do this, and all these things. It opens up lots of possibilities, and that's what I really wanted the book to do for people, and that's what I hope it does for people. It's so nice to hear you saying such lovely things about it. Thank you.
I just think you have a very authentic voice, and it comes across really well through writing. I'm sure a lot of people would really enjoy reading this book, and I'm sure we'll give them something, maybe some thoughts, maybe some insights that they were missing.
I hope so.
No, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this conversation and just coming on this call. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you. I just suppose just my last question really is, I know it's probably a bit putting pressure on you and asking what is next. Obviously, you've just published the book, and I'm sure you will take a bit of time to kind of celebrate and enjoy the moment. But is there anything coming up that you wouldn't mind sharing with people? Anything that you're excited about in the future?
Do you know what? I'm just really excited to have the time and space to get back to the day-to-day creating process of like more instant content, getting back to creating on Instagram, to blogging on my YouTube channel and writing blog posts again. I've really missed that, and I'm really excited to get back to that.
Absolutely. Well, I will link everything below, and I will link your book as well. I'm sure people will want to buy it and read it for themselves as well. But yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
You too.
Thank you so much for listening. It would mean a world to me if you rate this podcast. If you're using an Apple Podcast app, all you need to do is just scroll down a bit and hit those 5 stars. Don't forget to subscribe, that way you will not miss any future episodes. And if you would like to work with me as a life coach, you can find all information on my website, and you can get in touch with me through my Instagram or email. All will be linked in the show notes.